Okay, hi everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Gonna be drawing some hair today. But as always, I want to make sure that the live stream audio is working. And oh boy, man, it has been busy. Let me tell you guys, it has been just nonstop prepping for this convention. All right, beautiful. The audio works. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Timothy Von Rueden, better known as vonnart online. And today I'm going to be showing different ways and approaches to creating and drawing hair. Now, I have like 8 roughly that I want to get through today, but there are plenty more even than the 8 that I'm about to show. So during this live stream, if you have any comments or questions, just put @vonnart and I will do my best to answer your question. I do not have Josh with me moderating as he is in the other room still getting ready for the convention. He is finishing a lot of the hanging clips for our canvases and our metal prints, so I told him I can do the solo today. We got this. And even though it is crazy busy and I've been up pretty late every night getting ready, I promised myself I wouldn't be skipping Wednesday live stream. So here we are today. And this one is actually a pretty like detail oriented one in terms of like teaching. I feel like this is more of a teaching heavy stream rather than it just being like a free for all silly one. So as I like to start out these streams, if you guys want to put where you're watching from, I like to give a shout out and go ahead and kind of shout them out as we get started. And normally I do this because people usually come a little late and they always ask me, oh, I missed the beginning. And it's like, no, I usually give like 5 minutes for people to join in. So if you want to put where you're watching from and say hi, we will get started with that first. And the only other announcements is basically the obvious one. We will be at Anime Central this weekend. So if you are in the Illinois area, definitely come say hi to our booth. I'll have not only Josh and myself there, but we will have my 2 cousins, Lane and Jack, and it is their first convention ever, so I'm very curious to see how they react to the convention scene. It'll be very interesting. And also, oh, we're doing MomoCon then next week, so we'll be in Atlanta, Georgia. And then after that, we'll have Indie PopCon in Indiana. So it's quite the tour date the next 3 weeks. So it's going to be kind of busy. And that's why I haven't been drawing as much, just because we've been doing so much prep, because this booth is literally a 30-foot by 10-foot booth. It's huge. So we had just a lot of planning had to happen the last like week and a half, 2 weeks in terms of preparations. And then even like 4 or 5 weeks ago, I was just ordering a bunch of things. New poles, new canvases, new metal prints, new tablecloths, new hanging cloths. It's just been a lot. Well, thank you, Adam, for subscribing. Welcome, welcome. And I think that definitely made drawing go on more of a backseat, but I guess I can show a glimpse of what I am working on when I do have any free time. This is the drawing, and my Patreon backers can see all the steps that this drawing has been in, but it is probably like 50% done. So it's drawing just a lot of the little foliage background that is just taking a long time, and it's like a comfortably long time. I've been talking to Miles Art a little bit more, and if you guys don't follow him on Instagram, you should follow him. He's another fantastic pencil artist, but he made a Reels recently, and it talked about how to be more comfortable with drawings taking a longer time. And he mentioned something along the lines of, if this was your last drawing you ever did, would you be proud that that would be the drawing you did, or something along those lines. And I really liked that message, because I think sometimes I have such a we got to move on to the next drawing mentality. And it's hard for me to just like sit with the drawing and be comfortable that it might be taking like a week to finish, or even 2 weeks, or in the case of my 5-foot drawing upstairs, years. And sometimes that's hard to cope with in a society and culture where it's like, get things as fast and out there as possible. So that message really resonated with me. So I'm gonna let this drawing really like simmer like a slow cooker. It's gonna be a nice roast at the end. Hello, Denisa, for subscribing. Or thank you, Denisa. Oh man, that's how my mind is all over the place. Thank you, Denisa, for subscribing. Let's see here. Hello, Emily from Houston. Hello, hello. Oscar watching from my couch. Wonderful, love to hear that. Wait, no volleyball for you today? Or wait, no, never mind. I have volleyball tonight. Get this. I joined a outdoor volleyball league, and our first game is tonight. Of all nights, the night before we leave for the biggest convention of the year. So wish me luck on that. I haven't played volleyball in years. We'll see how I do. Nyango, hello, hello, and thank you for today's lesson. Yes, I am. This was definitely a heavily requested one. Apparently you guys want to see some hair being drawn. What a hairy predicament we've been in now. Oh, that was a terrible joke. Recalo from the Philippines. Hello, hello. Very excited. Haley, so excited. Yeah, the hair is always a popular one I've been realizing for you guys. New Moon Sin says, wonderful advice on working with drawing solely. Yes, Miles is just, he's great. It was mind blowing when I found out he was younger than me, but he's just full of wisdom and in that brain of his. Okay, are you guys ready? Okay, so let's go through them. So I'm gonna go through 8 different ones. So here are, let me make sure I have the comments pulled up here. There we go. So here are the ones I'm going to kind of go through. It'll be gestural, realism, Lineart, precision Lineart to be exact, and then minimal shading, like minimal detailing, but then shadow blocking, minimal shading again, but with gradients, and then detailed hair with gradients, spaghetti hair, which is the one I'm very fond of. And it was the one that inspired today's stream because this is what we did last week's stream, and it was requested by a lot of you. I think specifically Oscar was the one that really wanted the hair tutorials, so this one's kind of a shout out to you. And the last one is whimsical, which is the more like floaty, doesn't really make sense logically hair, but it's wonderful to look at. All right, I'm gonna move in a little closer here. Can I even zoom in here? Yeah, I think we might do some zooming. All right, I'm gonna make this bigger. Pop out chat, please. Thank you, thank you. And like I said, though, if you have any comments or questions during the stream, don't feel you can't interrupt me. That's the whole point of why I do these lives, is so we can have a back and forth. And then, Athira, hello from Saudi Arabia. Happy to be here. Hello, hello. Elena, I am so excited. Can't do any drawing tonight as I need to do work, but cannot wait to see the stream. Yes, I hope you guys learned something today, and we'll see how it goes. And then Oscar, of course I had volleyball. I have already played volleyball, but made sure to be back in time for the stream. Been looking forward to this one especially. Well, that's awesome. I know, now we're volleyball brothers as well. Okay, so let's get through them. So the first one, so this would be considered the gestural hair drawing. And I want to repeat one more time, these are not the only 8 ways you can draw hair, but these are just 8 ways that I usually approach hair. And they are different, but mind you, there's plenty more. So don't feel like you are constrained to just these. Okay, and I'm going to be using my character Tracy as kind of the example for the hair modeling. So I'm going to pull up some of the drawings I did of her back in the day and have them up here so I can kind of get a feel. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to do pretty much all the hairstyles in like the same way, but obviously drawn differently. So in this example, I think I'm going to do like a hair pullover where most of her hair has a line here and it's going to be pulled over and just draped on the other side with some of the hair kind of resting on her right shoulder. So gestural. So I think this would be the one that a lot of artists who begin drawing do this kind of a technique, where it's very loose, it's very light in its execution. I would say I use this when I am working on the iPad and just trying to get a general sense of how I want the hair to look. But when you're doing this, try to keep in mind the blocking that you're doing with shapes, because unless if you're doing spaghetti hair or something that's a little more realistic or almost nonsensical, a lot of the times when you're drawing hair, you're going to be thinking of hair in shapes. You're going to be blocking it out in different shapes. The worst thing that you can do is draw individual strands. Now, if you're much younger and maybe you're like, even like 13-year-olds, this is how I used to draw hair, was, drawing every strand, because you think of hair and you think of individual strands when you're younger, but then as you get older, as you mature in your ability to draw, you learn that you don't really draw individual hairs when you draw hair, surprisingly. You draw them in clumps, and that's how essentially you draw hair. And a lot of the times when I'm drawing hair, I'm thinking about the shape all the time. So even with this, I kind of want some of the hair to get cut halfway down, and then the rest of the hair fall underneath and over the shoulder. So sometimes I'll have like a few loose strands. So even though we're thinking in blocking out the shapes, definitely having a few loose strands at the end can really just be like the, you know, the cherry on the cake, the polish on the final rendering. And you can see how like even just like a few loose strands right in front of the face can add just such a variety in the tone of it. You know what though? I don't like the double strand. Even though this is supposed to be more gestural. And usually where it connects to the hair and like the hairline, I try not to draw like a heavy line across, even for a gestural. Let me move this toward the center. Because it makes it look more like a wig or more artificial. It's very strange. So instead I try to have more of a natural gradation to where the hair begins and ends. And then usually after I draw the hair, I'll like erase parts of the ear. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to take it much further than this. Yeah, this would be more of like the gestural way of drawing hair. So this is definitely like bare bones minimum. And usually I do this when I'm doing an underdrawing or I'm prepping for one of the other techniques of drawing hair, and this is like what I'm going to be drawing over essentially. So this one I would consider gestural. Gestural. Okay, so then moving on from that, the next one I would have would be realism. So if this is kind of your intro to drawing, this is your intro to like learning how to draw. So I'm going to try to block this in very similar to the gestural. And a lot of the times when you're doing realism or when you're learning to do studies of realism, it's a lot of surprisingly sharper lines, and then you kind of soften it up as you go along. So I'm going to show you guys how to block out the shapes here. And I know I should have done a better job at marketing this stream today. I literally did it like last minute because we've been so busy on this end. So I feel kind of bad because I feel like this could have been an easy like follow along tutorial. And you know what, maybe I'll do that next week. Would any of you guys want me to give you guys like a worksheet for next week and then you can draw alongside me of different ways to drawing here? Let me know if that sounds interesting. You know what, I think I'm gonna have the hair pulled back on the realism one. Because I think the realism one's a really good way of showing how to block in the values. Okay, so when I'm working with realism, I'll usually start by blocking it out like this. And a lot of this then comes down to shading. And I'm going to show you guys generally how I work this. And a lot of the times you're going to be blocking it out into different, kind of like what we said before, shapes. But this time we're going to even take it a step further. So working within these shapes that we created, I'm going to work with the natural flow of hair, because whenever you're drawing hair, you want to be working with the flow of the hair. You don't want to be including lines or chicken scratches that work against like the natural flow and the natural pattern that you have the hair going in, because that will really make your hair look off, and you definitely don't want that. So normally I just kind of block out some shapes. Let me draw some on the... Because I'm basically drawing indication lines of where I'm going to add the heavier shading versus the lighter shading. So probably something like this. Okay, so now from here, I'm going to literally fill in basically the shadow areas of the hair. So wherever it would be the darkest, like your occlusion shadows, where there wouldn't be a lot of light showing, usually behind the neck tends to be a bit dark. And then as we get into these shape areas that I drew, I'm going to leave the middle area lighter, because that's where the highlight part of the hair would go. And then everywhere else, I'm going to fill in darker. So kind of like you would shade. Let me draw like a strand of hair on the side here to kind of give a better example. So let's say this is a strand of hair. This would be the highlight section. So as we would draw this, I would shade in the areas before and a little bit within the highlight section, actually darker. And then in that highlight section, I would keep it lighter. So basically, wherever the hair curves and wherever it's angling towards the light source, I would make it a little lighter. And basically, you're just going to rinse, wash, repeat that everywhere in your drawing. And obviously, whenever doing studies of anything that you want to have more of a realistic feel, always use a reference. Always use a reference. But since my character Tracy has dark hair to begin with, I can fill in a lot of these areas to be darker anyways, because a lot of dark hair would absorb a lot of the light that would be reflected anyways on her. So I can kind of get away with making more areas darker than a lighter haired character. And I know a lot of artists would even use a blending stump or something to soften the edges more, and that definitely adds to that realism effect, because remember, there's no real outline in reality. So the way that I like to draw is very outline heavy, which is not realistic at all. I like to play with realism ways of lighting, but in terms of like outlines, it doesn't make sense to have a dark outline. So the strand down here is like a great example where we can do the highlighted section and then the darker section. And then usually I like to have a few stray hairs that kind of come off of the main shape that we have. So like if this is another main shape, I might have a piece of hair that kind of goes off like that. And then same on this side, I might just do something like that. Now, obviously, I'm on a time constraint because we're not doing a stream. So when I'm doing realism hair, it usually takes me a bit longer because you're definitely wanting to soften a lot of the edges. You're trying to give that execution of it looking very realistic, which can be a little time consuming. But I'm going to definitely put a little time into this so it at least gives the impression that I'm trying to explain. Because if this is more of like a tutorial stream, I definitely want you guys to be like, okay, I get what he's going for and how that could look realistic with more time and effort. So then especially where the hair would part in this, I would definitely try to like draw a few stray strands in that area. And then when I'm drawing the stray strands, I'm pushing really light on the paper as well. So I want those strands to feel naturally, like it isn't just like a harsh pencil line. It has that in and out. Because when you look at hair, you're not defining the hair that heavy as you're looking at it. They do kind of have this transparency look to it when they're more stray hairs. And I try to capture that as best I can. Then I might switch to a darker pencil to really punch out some of these values. Because right now I'm working with a 2H pencil. So with 2Hs, you're definitely going to get way lighter values than like a HB even. Actually, while I'm doing this, let me try to find a comment or a question. Amy from Atlanta, hello, hello. Wishi, hello. Janisha, hello, hello. Get ready to sketch your wigs on. No kidding, right? I know I have a bunch of these bald heads ready for some hair. Rueden Wonderland. Oh, don't worry. I only did the gestural sketch, and then we're doing an approach to realism right now. Which, like I said, these are more of like the introduction ways of drawing hair. like I don't even mean to shade any realism artists, but I feel like these are kind of the two ways that you kind of get started drawing hair. And then you, as you find your style and your voice and how you want to create hair personally, I feel like it's usually a variation off of one of these two starting paths. So I definitely look more at like gestural as my starting path. As realism, I oftentimes is just too soft for me, and I like a good line art to define my edges. Yeah, I think I'm gonna pull a pencil, a different or a darker pencil here soon. Yeah, a worksheet would be great. Yes, yes. You have wonderful nails. Well, thank you. I think one of them's painted. My niece did my nails on Sunday. I was over at my brother's house, and um, my niece is also like 4, so when she painted them on, it was like all over my fingers, and I had to literally like scratch the polish off of my skin after she did it. Um, I mean, she thought she did a really good job, so I obviously didn't want to say anything too harsh because she's 5, but I told her to keep her day job. No, I'm kidding. But thank you. Oh, hello, Nikki from Wisconsin as well. Hello, hello, fellow Wisconsinite. So also when I do realism, I'll take some of these shapes and block out like heavier, darker chunks to really separate like where the hair goes further back, and it would be a darker shadow even. So that's where I'm getting some of these shapes from. And you'll see me implement this style into some of the other examples that I'm going to be doing today. And then don't forget, please put at vonnart if you have any comments or questions. That way when I'm looking up and down from the comment section and the drawing, I can see it really quickly so I can get back to drawing. I have a bad habit of looking up too much and then focusing on talking more than actually drawing. And I've definitely had streams in the past where I feel like I barely got anything done because I was so focused on talking. Or not even just talking, but honestly just searching for the comments. And then normally what I'm doing here, I'll kind of do a soft gradient as well into the skin, because you don't want to have a really harsh line of where the hair begins and where the skin begins. So I'll usually fade in that gradient of wherever I would start to shade that skin. That way you can get a feel for where the hair begins, but it's not like a very direct, starting line and finish line. So you can see how this strand in the front here, this is one that I definitely want to put more focus on. Then as it gets further back, I know a lot of painters, especially in like the Renaissance era, would do this a lot, where they would just block it one kind of solid matte color. And I feel like I've definitely adopted that whenever I'm doing a realism, a freelance gig, or a commission, where I'll just let it be a flat, almost dark gray. So you can see how like you kind of have to build it up, and slowly the hair will start to have that more realistic effect. But it's a lot of layering. So I'm going to use that word a lot when I'm talking today about drawing hair. Layering is very important, especially depending on what type of hair you're trying to create. But for a lot of the hair that I create, typically if I'm going to add a gradient, which is one of my favorite things to do when I draw hair, I definitely build it up very slow, because you don't want to go too dark too soon, and then you're left with a drawing that you can't erase. You can't like revert back to an earlier stage of the hair you did because you pushed it so dark. Usually I'll have a few strands that are kind of doing their own thing. But all the while, no matter how I'm shading this, I'm still keeping those initial shapes that we kind of etched out in mind, because it's very important to know where those shapes are, because it helps tell the story of how the hair is lying off her head. Or his. Guys can have long hair too. So this is something that I do when I really want to amplify the shine. So if you want it to look like they have sleek hair, oily hair, wet hair, whatever it is, I'll take so this is a mono 0 eraser. I'll take it and just kind of give a brush over on where the highlight would be. So like in here, I think I took it a little too dark. So I'm going to brush some of the highlights back in. And then after I do that, I usually will go back and then just blend it with my pencil one more time. And then usually we're kind of done at that point. Now mind, if this was like a true realism study, I would definitely not draw it this small, because this is obviously smaller than my thumb even. So I'm kind of like trying to do realism very small, which often can minimize like the level of detail you have to do. But if I was doing this as like a portrait, like a full-size drawing of just someone's head, the hair would definitely take center stage, and you would really have to blend and blend and blend, and then make sure those shapes really stand out. And I think a lot more individual strands would be seen as well, but it would still kind of follow something along these lines. So then like this is too dark here. Make that darker. All right, and then just to help clarify some areas, I'm gonna go, so this is an HB, but it's mechanical because it's a little thicker, so I can kind of push some of this. So I'm not gonna be pushing the edging too much, as I'm just gonna fill in some of these darker areas and punch the values. And that's what will really help separate then the work that you did before, of kind of pushing where like the darker areas and the lighter areas would be. See how that can make a difference already? And like I can push this further back. And then normally what a lot of artists I know will do is at the end then they'll take their eraser tool and kind of give focus to like the little strands that will lay over. So you can see how we're kind of creating that effect there now. Remember, try to always keep your pencil strokes in the direction that the hair is naturally going in. Now, I knew that realism would probably take me the longest because it's the one I do the least, admittedly. So for those of you who are watching, don't feel like every one of these are going to take me 20 minutes. Some naturally will take longer, so like realism for sure, but the spaghetti hair one will definitely take longer just because you're drawing individual strands and then you're edging it out. So that just takes time. And you can see how I'm not really outlining the outer edge too much because this is realism, so you don't want to give a lot of focus to a heavy outline on the hair because it naturally would have that kind of out of focus effect to it, and you want that, especially when you're doing realism. You want it to have that appearance of it just naturally fading out on the edges. And I know a lot of oil painters would do that even for like skin. It's not like there is an outline to the skin, yes, but it's not like a visible outline. It's definitely like you see where the skin kind of ends, and then it has like a little fade area into the background, and then it becomes the background. Something like this. So let's see here. Elena says, sorry, we're chatting about ice hockey, so the chat is very full. Or chatamainin about ice hockey? What does that even mean? Is that some new trendy word that I'm not aware of yet? I feel like sometimes I'm one of the last people to hear about trends. Oh, it's legit talking about ice hockey. Okay. That's all right. So I think, what do I not like about this top part though? I'm gonna soften some of that. Yeah, something like that. So this would be the approach to realism. Now, like I said, this is not my favorite one, and there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube about realism drawing, hair specifically, and they probably have a bit more piece of advice than I could have because, like I said, I rarely do realism. I'm not the biggest fan of it. So let's move on. So if this is gestural and this is realism, now we're getting into what I would consider more of the fun ones. So these are more of like the stylized hair examples. So this one will be a precise line art. So let's see here. I'm gonna once again try to keep in line with the gestural one that I created. So I'll give myself an underdrawing. So very similar to the way that we did the gestural one. Except this time, when I go through, I'm going to really focus on the line art and the edging of the hair. And that's going to be the most important part for me. Yeah, man, even looking at this realism one, I feel like I should have played more with the heavier side of the hair. But I think because realism just is not as fascinating for me to draw anymore, I can always tell when I do realism, you can just tell that I'm not as into it. Okay, so if this is kind of the base, actually let me just draw. I don't know if I like the curve right here. Because the character that I'm doing this after, Tracy, has more of like, it's like slightly wavy, but it's not curly. Okay, so now for line art precise, what I'm going to be going through and doing is I'm going to be looking at the hair and I'm going to be adding a very dark, very thin outline. When I'm doing this, I'm looking at areas that I could add like pockets where there would be essentially a gap where you could see through the hair. Kind of like this. I guess this would be more in line with a like graphic novel way of drawing hair or like a manga. Obviously they would be even quicker than I am with it, but I definitely do this from time to time especially if I'm doing more of like an Art Deco style looking hair exaggeration. So when doing these, I try to have nice, long, fluid pencil markings. Because if I'm doing chicken scratch motions, it'll kind of read like that in the end. So I'll have some of the hair kind of be pushed off. And then sometimes I like to do these little block implications of where like the highlights would go. So you'll see some of that as I go through. You know what this also kind of reminds me of? Not only anime, but the way that Tetsuya sometimes draws his hair. Tetsuya Nomura, he is the concept artist for Square Enix, and I guess now like art director of a lot of the games. But he used to draw hair very much, not only in shapes, but very flowy, very like it would defy gravity in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of our generation kind of adopted that style when we drew characters, especially when we're younger. I feel like I drew a lot of characters that had very pointed, very defy gravity hair. And I'm sure a lot of you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so you can kind of see how it almost looks like a cutout, like you're cutting out paper or something. And a lot of times when I do this, I try to leave kind of the bigger chunks of hair more minimal. That can really help with blocking out like a contrast in detail. So let me do a little bit within here as well. Like I said, I'm going to keep it very minimum. That. Michelle says, are the numbers going to be different styles or different steps? Different styles, if you couldn't already kind of tell already. I used to do a lot of step-by-step tutorial when I worked at CG Cookie, so that was my teaching job. It was primarily color and digital art, but I've thought about doing them for pencil again and like showing step-by-steps of how I draw some of my pencil stuff. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave it somewhere around here. So then this is very much like I said, a heavy focus on the line art and having it almost read as like a paper cutout. Now, mind you, a lot of these I'm working pretty quick through because we got 8 of them to do and only 2 hours to do them. So I'm trying to get through them a little quicker. But this would be an example of doing the line art heavy. So this is, I guess I could call it line art precision. Did I spell that right? I think I did. Okay, so then moving on to the next one is, what did I write down? Minimal, but with shadow blocking. Oh, yes. Okay. So this one I feel like is also kind of in the same vein as the first two in a sense, where when you're learning how to do art, I feel like value or shadow blocking is also a big stage that you learn, and it's something that I actually do a lot. So I feel like this one should have actually been third, and then this is getting more stylized then. So let me go ahead and do that. And let's see. Elena says, yeah, we are for real talking about ice hockey world championships. Finland is playing against Sweden, and it's quite close to a national requirement to watch this game. Oh, that's interesting. I feel like in America, maybe the equivalent would be like the Super Bowl. That's probably the most popular. That is the most popular sports event we have in the States. Okay, so minimal and shadow blocking. So once again, let's grab our underdrawing. So like I said, I like to have a good underdrawing to work from. So I actually do feel like the gestural way of drawing hair is kind of the way that I draw the base for any of my hair drawings and most of my characters, but I guess that makes sense. Because I'll very rarely go in, kind of like what we did last week. It was kind of a weird example where I didn't really do an underdrawing. I just kind of like went for it. But if I'm doing like a precise hair look, I usually like to block it out first just to make sure that I like what the end result is going to look like. Okay, so if this is minimal shadow blocking, so essentially what I'm doing is I'm going to be looking at the areas that I think will be more in shadow and then literally filling them in entirely. You'll kind of get a feel for how this will slowly evolve into the final as I continue. And actually, this is a really good practice too in just understanding where values and shadows will lie. So I actually kind of suggest any of you trying to learn hair to try using this method where you kind of block out the shadows. Because one of my favorite artists, his name's Justin Gerard, great guy. I'm like honored that I can say he's one of my friends. He really believes in having the shadows be more matte, more like flat looking, and have your detail where a lot of the detail heavy areas will be right where the shadow and light meet, and then anything in light is where you can have more of your details. But his shadows he keeps pretty consistently blank with like maybe minimal bounce lighting references or shading. And I feel like I've adopted a lot of that mentality when it comes to working with shadows and light. So on this side, I think the shadow would be kind of under the hair where it's resting on the shoulder. So it looks something like this. And you can kind of already get the general sense of where the hair is and what it is. So then from here, I'll just do some minimal additions to the areas in the light, and then maybe a little bit more of like pulling the shadow up or down into the hair. And then honestly, that's kind of the way that I would do it in this style. I feel like this is another one that I tend to tweak with quite a bit in my drawings. Maybe have some darker shadow here. Actually, I'm going to pull a lot of that whole side into shadow. Like that. Oh, you know what though? Even looking at it on the camera, I feel like this should also kind of be in shadow. So this is what I said about tweaking. You kind of throw it down and then add adjustments here and there. But I gotta be careful because sometimes I'll start rendering too much and it doesn't really have that light shadow look anymore. So then I'll have to take my eraser and kind of bring back some of that light area again. Yeah, something like this. So this would be, I guess I would call this shadow blocking. So you can kind of already see there's quite a difference in like the approaches to doing hair. And this is definitely one of those things where I would play with like as many different styles of rendering hair as you can, because I think you'll find then in playing around with different styles of what suits you more and what you seem to really attach to. Because for the longest time I thought I had to draw more realistically, and I think that actually was hurting me because I was so constrained to feel like I was in this box of only having to draw realism. And then after a while realizing that there's parts that I like about realism, but it really isn't the main thing that I want to do. So I started to adopt some of the rendering techniques I would learn with realism, but then I would pull it into the way that I would render in my own style. And I think that's when you really start to become an artist with your own voice, is when you take, you know, bits that you like from all different types of ways of drawing and then implement it into your own Frankenstein style. So yeah, so these would be the first four, and then we're going to get into more of the gradation ones with these two, and then the more ridiculous whimsical ones with these two. So let me see if there's any comments really quick. Oscar, how much do you improvise when drawing the hair, and how much is deliberate and carefully planned? Well, for the stream it's a little strange because I don't have a reference that I'm really working from exactly. So most of this is just kind of winging it, and I think that's why it looks a little off in some areas. I think using reference is great, but since I'm trying to do the same hair look in each drawing, I would say it's definitely more planned, but I don't think I would use the word carefully planned. But when I normally draw, how much do I improvise? I would say most of it. I would say like 90% I improvise. Like if I do have reference up, it might just be for the general shape, but I'll barely follow that reference, to be honest. A lot of the times I'll take it in, like let me pull my book up. So when I draw hair, like this is all made up, obviously. This is more whimsical. So this will be the last example I show, where it's very much, it doesn't really make sense, but it looks like hair because it fits the style it's in. This is definitely more realism. This would be slightly stylized but more realistic. And then this is definitely whimsical. This actually has a little bit more of the gradation whimsical that I will be working on soon. But I feel like my card decks were something all of its own entirety. So this is a good example of, I wasn't using reference at all, but it definitely has that very, did I do the example yet? No. It's one of the next ones where you're blocking it out so it has the shapebular effect that hair has, but then I'll do like minimal rendering within it. So it uses hints of realism, but you can tell like this back, especially where I'm doing the negative value and keeping it more white, I'm making it more shapebular. So it gives the appearance of hair, but obviously it doesn't look like it's rendered realistically. Let's see if there's one where I did like a long hair. Oh, this would be more of a realism approach. Like I said, not my favorite. Realism kind of bores me. This would be very whimsical. Once again, very whimsical. Gives the impression of hair, but it's definitely, if you just separate it, no one would guess, oh, that's hair, you know, on its own. It almost looks like gas or like wind stylized. This is a good example of shadow blocking. So I'm literally pushing the lights and the shadows, and I'm separating the two just on that. So I'm not really detailing within either of them that much. Oh, this is another good example of shadow blocking. So literally it's fading even with a no edge, and you can really see the detail in some of the front area. I'm just implying hair, which honestly, I think this is a great way to do hair, where you're just kind of implying it. This would be kind of like shadow blocking, but mixed with more rendering within the shadow areas. But you see how the areas in the light, I'll just keep mattes. I literally don't even like imply strands of hair, because it's already implied based on the other sections of the hair. And that's how I really like to do hair. Oh, this is a good example of gestural hair, like our first one. It's very loose. It gives the rough shape of what hair is, but it doesn't define it solely. Oh, is this the next one I'm doing? This is the 6th one that I'll be doing, where it's minimal, they're not minimal. Oh yeah, so it's a line art, but with heavy gradations. So you can see how I'm really focusing on the gradient more than anything else with the hair. And then we're getting more whimsical with the little flyouts on the sides there. Very whimsical, low-key my favorite way of drawing hair. I love implying hair in a way that is totally not realistically rendered. And I'll always look at this drawing very fondly because I love the way that I drew the hair on this one. And I don't often say that about a lot of my drawings, where I actually can look back on it very, very fondly. Oh, I guess this would be more of a realistic approach. You can see how it's a lot of soft edges, a lot of cutaways. It's not perfectly clean because hair usually has a little bit more of its disorganization. Weirdly, the more imperfect it looks, I guess if you want to call it that, the more perfect it looks in sense of realism rendering. I'll just go through a few more examples and then we'll get back to it. Obviously, this is line art. This is very much what we were doing with the third one. Very much focused on the line art of it and not doing almost any shading at all. Even though this isn't a human, very much whimsical. It implies hair, but you wouldn't know that it's hair just by singling it out. And then this is definitely the gestural, the first example I was talking about, where you give the gesture of the hair and you kind of block it out, but like minimal shading, and not much more after that. Spaghetti hair. This is also the cover of the book with the angel. This will be the 8th example I do. And then let's see if we have any more to end it off. Surprisingly, this is actually more of an approach, like it's a mix of realism and whimsical. It's like somewhere in between those two. Spaghetti hair. You'll definitely see me do a lot of that. Literally, this is line art precision, but like super focused on implying hair without actually drawing hair. You know what I mean? And I love doing that with negative space because I guess some people would say, well, it saves you time. But in my mind, I think it's a powerful visual of having just a mass of your drawing just be blank, and yet it still reads as hair. And there's the spaghetti hair. Okay, let's get back to it. Maybe I'll go through another one of my books as an example after I do these two. So let's see. Elena says, yeah, it's close to the Super Bowl, but it's funnier as Finns are often more stressed about playing against Sweden than playing the final. Oh, I'm assuming there's like a rivalry there, question mark. Let's see here. Where's another at vonnart? Lisbeth says, always surprised at how many people are so impressed by realistic drawings or paintings copied from photos. Takes away puzzling of art completely away. I think like realism definitely has its place in the art world. For me and my taste level and what I'm looking for, I'm definitely not looking for realism. I think I can appreciate the technicality of it, but as we talked about on the live stream where we were talking about AI art, I still have the post-it note on my desk, but a lot of how I see art is not only in its process, which is a whole different post-it note, but in the execution. So for me, the execution is the technicality, which yes, this would be realism, but it's missing the creativity, and more often than not, it's missing the personal input. And I need for me personally, when I'm looking at art and I'm looking at the execution of it, that's what I'm kind of judging and grading it on in my head. So yes, technically a realistic drawing is very well done, technically, but what emotion are you driving home with it? Like what am I learning about you as the artist or what you're trying to say with it if you're just drawing like a pretty girl portrait in 3/4 view? Not to call out artists, but I'm just saying not so much for me. Let's see here. Elena says, yeah, just a little bit of a rivalry. Classic case of neighboring countries being rivals. That's the same thing in the States, but instead of countries, it's states. So like for Wisconsin, specifically with football, Illinois has a team called the Bears, and we have the Packers. And the Packers and Bears are like one of the oldest rivalries in football that I know of. And anytime they play against each other, it's definitely a bigger deal to want to watch those games because of it, the underlying rivalry. Okay, let's get back to this. So the next one, what did I write down, was gradations. Yes, this is really fun. So like I said, I'm going to start out doing the gesture again. Oh, I love a good gradient, especially in hair. Like, I know it's visually pleasing and, like, everyone likes a gradient, but I don't care. I love gradients in hair. Oops, I'm off screen. Oh my gosh. Yeah, if that ever happens, just let me know and I'll fix that right away. Since Tracy is more of a wild card, I try to have more of these strands as she's like working at her nightclub and pushing the hair back and it's just kind of moving and flowing kind of in a wild direction. It like isn't fully listening to the way that she wants it to be, and I feel like that's kind of Tracy. And this is kind of like the underlying storytelling elements that I like to express when I tell stories. So even something like her hair can express an underlying feature or a personality trait of the character themselves. So for Tracy, to me, she is like a spitfire. She is intimidating. She is confident, like too confident, and she's a little bit wild. So to express it in her hair, I like the idea of her hair being like pushed back so you see all of her face. So it kind of, like, honestly, even these little strands in front of the face probably wouldn't be happening as much when I draw her in my book. Her hair is probably going to be pulled back more like here, like really high up, and very much like, I am here going to face you. There's going to be nothing in between you and me. It's going to be a little messy because Tracy's a little messy, even though she's confident, and it's going to be wild. And I think having secondary elements like their hair, their wardrobe, how they are positioned, how they stand, can say a lot about the character themselves. So if you're writing a book or if you are doing a character for whatever novel or whatever short story or even a video game, whatever you're doing, really try to think of those secondary elements and how those can add to your character so that when someone sees your character, they can have an impression and kind of understand who that character is without even having them say a word. Now, obviously, we shouldn't be judging people too harsh on like judging a book by its cover, but as artists, that's kind of exactly what we're doing all the time. We're looking at our characters and how they're positioning and why would they position that way, and it's very much like intentional. Or at least when I try to do my characters, I try to have everything be very much intentional so that it's not just like on the whim I'm drawing this character this way or positioned this way just because. Okay, so with my gestural sketch in place, I'm going to literally lightly create a gradient going up. Oh, why does it go out of focus? Is it because my hand's there? Oh no. Don't worry, I'll ask Josh to help me fix that before next week. But essentially, I'm not really caring too much about the lines here. I'm just kind of filling them in, kind of like a paint by numbers book, honestly, where I can even add a few if I want. You just kind of fill it in then entirely. And then you just literally gradation up. Now, some people might like the hatching or even cross-hatching going up. You see this probably more in comic books. I'm going to try to fill it in a little bit so it doesn't have the line marks be seen as clearly. And this is always pretty fun for me. I love doing gradients in hair. Let's see, what were the comments here? For Mini Geeks says, Tim, when are you coming back to Belgium? I don't know. I don't know when I'm coming back to Europe. I was planning on coming to Scotland in 2020, but obviously that didn't happen. And then I know a few of my friends are talking right now. We might do a Comic-Con in Paris next year, or possibly, where was the other place? Was it Spain? I think it was Italy. We're looking into it right now, so obviously I'll announce if we get into any of these European cons, because obviously I would love to meet some of you, especially because I know a lot of my watchers and a lot of the people watching these streams, and even you guys live, a lot of you come from different countries. So me only doing state conventions, I feel like is limiting my access to a lot of you and like meeting you in person. Because I know it's really expensive for a lot of you that want to maybe come to a convention in the States. It's expensive, especially right now. I mean, have you guys seen the gas prices for airplanes and stuff? Or just for automobiles, but then that translates into airfare becoming more expensive. Because right now, at least for us, traveling across the state is very, very expensive. Like one of my friends lives in Utah, Sean Price, love him to death, and he wants to come visit in July. And he called me one day. He's like, I don't know if I'll be able to make it because it was like $800. And for a flight from here to Utah, it should not cost $800. Like 400 tops, honestly. Thankfully, he was able to find a really cheap one, and he's going to be able to make it. But the fact that that even had to be a conversation that we had to have with one another was crazy. Do you kind of see how the gradation's fitting? You know what? I'm going to make it even more of an obvious gradation. I'm going to make the top of the hair really, really blank. So kind of like what the examples that I was just showing, where it was like implying hair, but since other areas of the hair are more detailed, you don't really have to detail the area that's more blank because it's already implied that it's hair. So I'm going to get a bit darker on this bottom half to really emphasize the gradation that we're creating here. Dynasty says, quick question. A lot of these examples are flowing and long hair. How do you go about shaping, rendering short, strict styles? Example, a bob or similar style. I hope I explained well enough. Absolutely. You know what? Maybe I'll do that on, not next week, because next week's going to be the follow-along tutorial. Let's do the week after. I'll do short hair. Let's just keep doing hair and knock them all out. Because you're right, doing long hair, I definitely approach it way different than when I'm doing short hair. Especially when I'm drawing a lot of my male characters, a lot of them have the shorter hair, and I actually think it can be more challenging sometimes doing shorter hair, because with long hair, it naturally can have this like beautiful flow, and I mean, that's why you see all these top artists like Loesch and Rostrals, and a lot of them do like flowing big hair because it is aesthetically pleasing. It really is. But to condense it into short hair, and I've actually seen Loesch do a really good job with some of her short hair characters. You really have to like tighten it and still give it a lot of that wispy flowiness, but contained to like a smaller area. And when I show my next book, hopefully I'll show some of my guy drawings that I do that I try to really contain the whimsicalness and still capture that kind of aesthetically pleasing look to it. Oscar says, will we have time to go over about drawing different types of hair, like curly, straight, semi-curly, heavy, light, thin? I think we'll make that in the 2 weeks from now video as well. So we'll do short hair, and then we'll talk about curly versus straight and all that kind of stuff. Because you're right, this stream's definitely more on like different styles of rendering hair. But I guess we would have to have a stream on the different styles of hair to even begin with. But I guess this is like a good intro to, you know, you can draw hair in many different ways. Don't limit yourself to just one. Let's see here. For Minigeeks says, if you need a place to crash, if you do, fax, you are welcome at mine. Well, thank you. I might take you guys up on some of these offers because I did that when I went to Australia. I had my friend Kieran, who also was watching the streams at the time, and he mentioned that like if we came to Australia, we could stay with him. And we did, what was that con called? Supernova, and we stayed with Kieran then, and it was great. So, yeah, I might take you guys up on these offers. Oh gosh, 15M4 space capital OLA space lot ace. Thank you for subscribing. I know, especially Tijal, who's one of the mods on our Discord and usually comes to these live streams. He basically organized also avoid doing this when doing hair. Really quick, this looks, in my opinion, bad. I think when you have two shapes that are so close to each other repeating like that, I think visually it creates whatever the equivalent of like a tangent is. That's what I think of when I see hair that looks like that so close to each other. So I try to always change it so that we don't have that effect. So yeah, Tijal organized a bunch of me and a bunch of his friends and then a bunch of my friends to go to Fax in Belgium, and we stayed in a Airbnb all together. It was really nice. I would definitely do that again. And I know Jonathan Liddell, who now works at Lighthouse with Bobby Chu, he used to be a very much avid watcher of these streams, and he was the one that convinced me to want to go to Scotland, because then he said he would show us around. Okay, so I think, actually, you know what? I think I did the gradation too high up. I'm going to erase some of it. That's the beauty of a kneaded eraser. You can just pull it out and just lift some of those values. Casper, what are you doing? Okay, yeah, let's keep on moving. So this would be gradation, or gradients, I should call it. Oh gosh, how do you, I always spell gradient wrong. Is it ENT? Ooh, I'm gonna fact check myself really quick. It is ENT, okay. Still got it. Oh, hi Casper. Everyone, this is Casper the Cat. He's my beautiful little black cat, aren't you? Beautiful little boy. You want to say hi to the camera? Hi. He likes to be held like a baby. He likes to sleep in attic spaces. And he gets very nervous when the front door opens. But besides that, he's actually kind of a wild child. Whenever we let him outside, he'll immediately start rolling in the dirt. So every time before he comes inside, I'll have to like hold him up and like pat him everywhere. Because he looks like that character from Peanuts that's just like covered in dirt and just has like a dust storm around him. So it's always funny patting him because he goes from like a light brown back to being a black cat after giving him a few pats. Hey. Okay, can I get back to drawing? Wait, I'm going to put you on the ground. He's a cutie. Okay. So that would be the gradient method. I use this all the time. This is probably one of my go-tos the most. It's easy for me to do. It quickly reads his hair, and it's honestly just really fun for me to do. All right, what was the next one? A detailed gradient. I feel like I kind of did that with this one. I might skip that one because I feel like minimal and detailed gradient for me is very similar. The only difference is I probably wouldn't put as much detail in the shadow. So you know what? I think we're only going to do 7 heads because I wrote those two down thinking that they were different enough, but actually thinking about it, I don't think they are different enough. So let's go to spaghetti hair. This is the one that I think is the most visually appealing for like graphic work, or I think most recognizable by like Muka, Art Deco, um, and it should have the results similar to this. And I do this when I'm feeling the most like, I don't know the right word for this, adventurous? I don't know. But I do like spaghetti hair a lot. I'm curious to see how this will look on Tracy. Let's see, when I'm doing the underdrawing, let me look for questions here. Jen says, hello, Tim. Hey, Jens. How's the week been going? Crazy. I've been super stressed. ASIN has been stressful because it keeps changing their policies on the vaccine requirements or mask requirements. At one point, they pulled the mask requirements, so then we weren't going to bring our mask or anything. But then late last night, they changed it back to you have to wear your mask. And it's been kind of admittedly a whiplash experience, because I feel like the organizers of this con should give the people attending and the people that are doing the show, so like the exhibitors and the artists, more than 3 days notice when they're changing policies that are a pretty big deal for some people. For me, I think if you're going to be going to a convention at this point and you're going to have raves and you're going to be around 30,000 plus people, I think you're putting yourself in a risk situation. So I think there's a little bit of a risk assessment that you need to be doing and what you're comfortable with before you go to a show like this. But yeah, getting ready for the show, besides the drama of that and seeing the artists were going crazy, honestly, pretty good right now. The last 5 days I've been staying up till like midnight, 1, 2 a.m. just like prepping and working and golding and gold leafing and cutting and making new signs. It's been a lot, but feeling way better now that like 90% of it's done. So if you guys want to see the end results, I'll probably take photos of it because we literally leave tomorrow for it. And we'll be leaving really early, probably like 9 a.m. And then we'll be spending most of the day just getting it up and ready for the weekend. So thank you for asking. Let's see here. Sergio says, at the moment, without the amount of hair you have drawn on the stream, I have to ask, does your hand hurt or do you just ignore the pain? I'm not a very heavy-handed artist to begin with, so like I rarely have pain in my arm. You know what? Let me sharpen this pencil really quick. I know for a lot of artists, carpal tunnel is like a really serious issue, and I feel like hold on. Whew. There we go. And I feel like I've had the pleasure of not pushing down so hard on my paper, and I've never taught myself to push down hard on my paper, so like I rarely feel arm pain. The only time I actually feel like pain from drawing too much is if I'm not resting properly, I'm not eating properly, all that good stuff. So how do you draw spaghetti hair? The way that I draw spaghetti hair is basically start from one strand and you go all the way to the tip of the hair, and you could still overlap other strands of hair on top of it, but to at least have a base, you have to draw the entirety of the hair purely in like spaghetti strands. And the way that I like to look at it is sometimes I'll let my lines be a little looser. So like imagine something like this. Okay, if that's the shape that I'm originally building with, let me erase the underdrawing here. Basically, it's my job to fill in that space with lines. So I might take this edge here, and maybe I'll have that one be the one that goes all the way through. Then I'll have another one that comes up like this. Do I need to zoom in here? So a lot of like drawing spaghetti hair is honestly just filling in the space. If I was being more precise with how I'm doing this. I do think shapes that are a bit more overlapping helps. So try not to just draw all your hairs in like a straight line going down. It's funny, normally with spaghetti hair, I actually rarely let the ends of the hair be seen. I kind of like the playfulness that spaghetti hair like never ends. It's like this tangled yarn or knot. So that's why whenever I draw spaghetti hair, rarely like what I'm doing here, like drawing the ends, I rarely actually do it this way. But you know, sometimes it's good to experiment. And that is what drawing's all about. And then I'll show you once you do a pass, I actually do give a little bit of a thicker line to some areas of the hair, and that's what makes it go from this to something like this, where it reads a little cleaner, because it's very obvious the outer line is usually a little darker, and then the inside lines are a bit lighter. And then sometimes I'll let the lines even become a little lost, just to add to that. So let me go through and do the right side and the top. Sometimes I'll like work my way around the spaghetti hair and give myself almost like what would I be calling these? Oh, what's that called? Like grounded areas. I know there's a better word, but basically grounded areas that I can build upon later. Kind of like a foundation. Is it a marker? Maybe it's a placeholder? Something. Where I know I can work with it later and just getting a general vibe of where I want the spaghetti hair to be. I almost made a full tutorial a year ago on how to draw spaghetti hair, and I still might. Actually, I've been getting the itch to make YouTube videos again in the future. Don't hold me to it. It's just a weird feeling I've been having lately, and I'm like kind of excited right now to do it. So I might as well ride that train. But I was gonna have a girl with like super long hair, think like 20-foot long hair, and she's gonna be sitting on a plate, and she's gonna hold like a giant fork, and I'm just gonna call it how to draw spaghetti hair, and she's literally spaghetti. I thought that was kind of funny. At least in my own mind, it was a funny visual. It's like a visual gag that I kind of want to do. Oh boy, sorry, a lot of questions here. Zomber Pika says, yeah, hi, have you uploaded some videos of anatomy? And if you didn't, will you do at some point? Literally what I was just kind of mentioning. I have been curious to do more YouTube tutorials again. I don't know what that looks like, and like maybe I'll do anatomy stuff. I know there's so many good anatomy ones though on YouTube already. I mean, I guess I could give my own take, but if you look up Proco, I think he's the best when it comes to YouTube tutorials for art. I mean, let's be honest. Most YouTube artists are more entertainers than they are artists, and they're not really great with like technique or end result or execution. It's more like flashy and trying to be entertaining in some way, which is fun. I watch some of those too. So you know what? Maybe I could add more to the YouTube scene for artists where it's more educational based. And like, yeah, there might be some comedy included in it if you consider any of what I'm talking about funny. But for the most part, I think I would want to actually produce results that I think would help people or help people understand like how to draw a hand. And it would be more than just like flashy, here's how you draw a hand and blah, 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 and then like swipe away and it's a finished hand. I'm like, that didn't teach anything. I actually feel like I know less about how to draw hands after watching that than I did before watching this video. So yeah, anatomy I could put on that list. Galaxara says, will it be possible to buy your books online in summer with all the conventions you are doing these days? Like, do you have an idea if you are usually sold out? Actually, I just did a huge order of all of my books, so we are pretty well stocked for at least the rest of the year. So yeah, if you want to get mine on Etsy or my original store, honestly, I would actually prefer if you get my books to do it at vonnart.net. I don't know if you guys are aware of any of the Etsy strikes and their recent price increase. It's a mess right now. But I actually make more net money profit off of my website sales than I do Etsy. So I'm trying to drive traffic away from my Etsy as much and towards my personal website. Let's see here. Jen says, I do light hand as well. And as an inexperienced artist, I was like, are you choking the pencil or something? Are you choking the pencil? I mean, it probably looks like I'm in pain. Sometimes when I draw so close to the tip, which I know is not like the academic way of drawing, but I'm not the most academic drawer, to be honest. Yeah, I feel like when I draw, it looks like I'm like white knuckling it, but honestly, it's very light. It looks worse than it actually is. Let's see here. Sergio says, have you done the Whimsical Hair? Are we still missing that one? That will be the next one. Whimsical Hair is the main one that I use when I draw hair. So it's the nonsensical, it implies hair, but it's not shaded or drawn in a way that would be close to how hair is realistically represented. Currently, we're on spaghetti. And normally for spaghetti hair, I'll usually do like a strand kind of covering the hairline more. Kind of hate that though for this one. Just so that you don't see all these like short lines in the front of the head. Oh yeah, so if this would be stage 1 of spaghetti hair, let's get into stage 2. This is where I'll be kind of outlining some of the outer lines and kind of just lightly tapping some of the inner lines just to give it more shape. Let's see here. Taylor says, how would spaghetti hair look perfectly straight? How would you avoid it looking boring? Did I do one recently? I feel like if you did spaghetti hair straight, you would still have to have like either a little bit of a curl at the end or have them just kind of interlacing together like this. I mean, this is how I usually do spaghetti hair, where it's not like on a pre-existing bald head thing. And I just kind of play with whatever direction the hair tells me it wants to go in. Something like that. So I guess this would be like an example of straight hair, but make it more fun. But I feel like it'll always just have a little bit of a wave just to make it overlap more and give it a little bit more of that interest. Also, if you haven't noticed, my go-to words when doing live streams are a little bit and actually. I remember being called out by my boss years ago on being more aware of saying those words because I say them too often. So if you hear me say those words a lot on the stream, I apologize in advance. It is like burned into my brain. Those are my go-to words. But it's better than like and or at least I like to think so. Oh, there we go. So you can see on the difference between the left and the right side, we already have a bit more of a blocked in illusion on the left side. And then I'll usually take my eraser and kind of cut down on some of the areas so it like creates that effect. And sometimes I'll even fill in a little gradient because like I said, I love a good gradient when it comes to hair. Something like that, just to give it a little bit more of that flow and that look pointing the direction up. Actually, I might take out that strand. Let's see here. Yango said, or wait. Jen says, the fork thing sounds super cute. You could use the screen from The Little Mermaid as homage if you want. That'd be kind of cute. Yeah, right. I think I will do that one. That one I think I will for sure do this summer, especially because June and July I don't actually have conventions lined up. So I have a few months to kind of play with whatever I want. I'll probably make them Patreon exclusive for the first 3 months, and then I'll release them to the public. So if you are my Patreon backer, you will be the first to see Spaghetti Girl. Let's see here. Galaxara says, thank you. I'll make sure to buy it from your website. Yes, thank you. Sergio, your website looks so magical. We actually did a big U-Haul on it. What was it, in April? And I was actually pretty proud of the website. I like how it looks right now. And like you can see all my tarot cards and all the ones that are finished, I should say. And they're all collected together, so you can kind of get a feel of what the finished tarot card set will look like. Because I'm on the 12th one now. Yeah. Thank you. Oscar says, are you ever coming to Sweden? If you do, I think you'd have great success on the Baltic Sea Festival in my hometown. I've never heard of it. I mean, literally, I'm not opposed to going anywhere. So if there's a con nearby where I can kind of make the money back from the travel, I'll look into it. So yeah, I'll look into it. And I'll even ask some of my friends if they've heard of any good Sweden ones and see if there's any interest to maybe have like a small group of us go together. Yeah, it would be great to meet you, Oscar. I mean, a lot of you, it would just be kind of fun to put a face to the name and to have more of like a personality associated with the username, because oftentimes, you know, I don't know what most of you look like, and when I meet people in person, then I'm like, oh, okay, so that's this artist. Okay, that's so-and-so. And then when I'm talking to you guys on the stream, then I have a little visual in my head of who you are. Okay, so this would probably be my example of spaghetti hair on very tightly controlled rendition, because I'm trying to do this type of a hair pose. But when I'm doing spaghetti, more often than not, we're getting whimsical with it. We're getting weird. We're getting stringy and wild. But if I was trying to control it, it would look something like this, I would say. Okay, the last one and my favorite. Oh wait, I gotta put spaghetti. Okay, since we're not doing the 8th one anymore, we're gonna X that one out. We're gonna do my favorite one, which is whimsical. So what is whimsical hair? Let me see if I can pull my book 3. This is a good example of the gradients that I did, but like on a very much more detailed scale. So this is like heavy detail gradients. But still I wouldn't consider this realism though, because the blank negative space doesn't really make sense. I'm kind of placing highlights where they shouldn't be, like behind the head. Purely a contrast value thing that I'm doing there. All right, let's look at this one. Oh yeah, so actually this is a little preview of my book Swordplay that I'm working on. This is an example of kind of like a sketchy realism, but kind of shadow blocking. But then if you look at the side of her head that is shaved, it's very much neutral, so it has that unrealistic look. And the hair that goes down the back of the neck area and then like to the side of the head, I make it lighter to add that contrast from the darker areas behind it. And this would be very much different than how I draw hair nowadays consistently, but I still like the way that I rendered it. This is the detailed gradient that I'm talking about. This is the one that I normally do, besides the whimsical one, obviously. This would be, I would say, almost more shadow blocking plus gradient. So you can obviously see the gradient from the top of the head going down, but it's not realistic and it's not gestural enough, so it definitely has that precision to it. The gradation, even with beards. I guess this would be a little bit, well, it's like a realism gradient. It's funny, once you start to recognize how, this is definitely shadow blocking. Once you recognize like there's different styles of rendering hair, you start to pick up on how you draw it This is whimsical for sure. And for me, it's usually one of these 8. Whimsical, whimsical. This is actually when I did my realism tutorials on CG Cookie a long time ago. And it was like drawing the facial features. And I did like a very up close and personal look at the eyes, nose, ears, lips. Okay, this is the negative space that I'm talking about where it's implied, but I'm actually not drawing any detail within the hair. This would be, oddly enough, this is more shadow blocking. This is more shadow blocking as well. So you can kind of usually see, even like looking back, me hindsight looking at my art, I can kind of tell what period of art I was in and what I was inspired by. Like this is very much shadow blocking as well. This is more gestural. Actually, this is Tracy. This is the character that I'm drawing today. This is very gradient with line art precision. So the third example I was talking about, where like you put a heavy focus on the outer line with like, oh yeah, see even the highlights. See how I sometimes do the little blocks to imply highlights. So it's like line art precision plus gradient. And I do that a lot when it comes to long hair. Trying to find one of my short hair ones. Oh, here's a better example. So this would be, surprisingly, line art precision plus shadow blocking on this one. And honestly, kind of whimsical. But speaking of the short hair curly, this would be my example of short hair curly, where it almost has that marble statue where cutouts where it's like these big shapular curls. In this one, I remember I loved working on the hair on this one. But when you're doing curly hair, I would definitely look at reference because the way it overlays and interplays with each other is kind of crucial to understanding how curly hair looks. So I would definitely try that. Try drawing curly hair for sure, but definitely use reference. Whimsical, nonsensical. Let's see here. So this would be a line art precision one. This is definitely focusing more on the line art than anything else. And I guess curly short hair for this one as well. See how they kind of create these ringlets and they overlap on one another? I think that's a really important thing to understand when it comes to doing short hair. This would be considered more realism. So I'm really focusing on the strands of hair. Nonsensical. Oh, there's realism. There we go. There's some realism. Realistic drawing right here. Kind of a loose realism, very like sketchy realism. I'm just trying to find one short hair guy. Oh, obviously this would be line art precision plus gradient, my favorite thing. Kind of shadow blocking. That one's a little more interesting. And usually when I'm doing studies, especially of people, very much gestural. I'm not going to be putting a lot of time into detail because I need to be quick with how I'm rendering it. This is more of like a realism study, but actually turned out to be more of like a line art precision with like a little bit of a gradient. Man, I thought for sure. Oh, here's some of my, oh, here's Tracy. So this is the character we're drawing today. So speaking of overly confident and like a no she's attitude, we'll say. And I love interacting with hair. So when I'm drawing characters and I'm creating character concepts, their pose is so important to like who they are. And Tracy is such an easy energy for me to try to capture because it's just confident. It's just like playful. It's messy. It's there's an energy to it. So I love drawing hair that like interacts with like hands, or if they have a hat on or something where it can like play with that too. So here's more example like short hair. I mean, especially for guys, this is more of like a boring short hair drawing where it's like, yeah, it's borderline gestural shadow blocking. Same with Nate on this side. But once again, I know this isn't like a character tutorial, but be very aware of how you place your hands and how they're interacting, because I think that can say a lot about the character themselves. And more standard. Once again, more gradients. This is more whimsical. That's my next example I'll be doing. Oh, here we go. So this is a good example of, it's borderline realism on the front half, but then the back half is definitely more of the shadow blocking slash negative space, and I do this transition between it. And I love playing with this type of a look because it's hinting at realism, especially with the way that I shaded the skin. But the hair, it's entering into more of like a whimsical territory, and I love that. I love doing that in art. Here we go. You can see how it's more implied hair once again. So yeah, I guess I didn't have as many short hair boys in this one as I thought. That's okay. So let's move on. What do we have? 23 minutes? Okay, and I'm going to do the last one, which is whimsical. Let's see. How will I do whimsical on Tracy? All right, well, first let's start with the gesture. I might actually make it even a little bit more crazy because, like I said, whimsical, you can kind of have a bit more free reign with it. Especially with like hair floating and it kind of defies gravity and all that. I love that. Okay, while I'm doing this, let's see if there's any questions here. Nyango says, Shinichi Sakamoto's work has a vibe like yours, but he uses ink, at least in some cases, right? I wonder how you get such effects with other techniques than pencil. You know what? Good question, because I almost entirely work with pencil and then sometimes digitally. So I wouldn't be able to best explain how to draw hair with like watercolor or oils. That I would definitely look to other artists on how to do those mediums, because me trying to explain it would be like me trying to explain how to build a house or something that I don't have experience in. I feel like I just wouldn't be qualified. And I wouldn't want to give you guys the runaround of being like, oh yeah, I can teach you anything, you know? I feel like Tracy's going to get a little bit of a almost like a goddess appearance on this one. I'm sure she would not, if she was a real being, I'm sure she would not love me drawing her this way. So when I'm doing whimsical, I'm just having fun with it. I literally am just pushing and pulling shapes and directions in a way that I enjoy seeing, and then however it comes out, it comes out, and I'm not gonna force it too much to be playing in like a way that I want it to. I'll just kind of let the composition speak for itself, and if I like it, I like it. Jen says, or wait, Galaxara says, I would love to see some more artists come to Scandinavia, so we have a few visiting from outside Europe, or so I feel. Well, that was in response to Oscar. Oh yeah, I mean, I do think it's fun for artists to travel more than just outside of their like close vicinity, and I think that's something I need to do more, especially as hopefully COVID starts to die down a bit more. Jen says, Google being all like, you are searching vonnart. How about we show anything but the website? Oh, that's not good to hear for me. Yeah, hopefully you'll be able to find it quickly. I know Etsy does like offsite ads that you are forced to now contribute in when you are an Etsy shop now, which kind of is a bummer because you can't turn them off. And if they make a sale with their offsite ads, they take a good percent. I think it's like 15% or something of the money you make, which is a lot, and you can't turn them off. It's very strange. So yeah, that's why we're trying to put more energy and effort into the main site now. So definitely when I'm doing whimsical, I'm definitely thinking floating. I'm definitely thinking about the curves and the way that the hair is interacting with itself, how it's overlapping, that kind of thing. Hey, Joe. Hello, hello. Tim, stop it. You're making me wanting to buy your books. Right? Unsolicited advertising for my books through pretending that they're examples. How dare I? Hope you're doing well. Let's see here. Sergio says, after you finish your pencil drawing, do you add a spray or something? So there are fixatives, is what they're called. So there's a matte one, MATTE mats, and those you can spray on top of your work, and it'll hold the graphite so it's not falling off of the paper. Because I just heard somewhere that apparently graphite naturally will just slowly start to fall off of the paper if you hang it upright, and over the years it'll just become lighter and lighter, which is kind of scary to think that your pencils are just not permanent. They will one day just degrade, and you would need people preserving them if you want to keep them intact. Galaxar says, 0G hair is the best. Ever since I saw Eris, Goddess of Discord, the DreamWorks movie Sinbad, has implemented in my own work as well. Yeah, it's very fun. I don't think I've ever met an artist that doesn't like to play with flowing hair if they draw a lot of characters. It's very freeing too, because then you don't feel constrained by realism, and you don't feel like it has to be as tight maybe as line art. Yeah, no, I just like it. It's fun. And that's great about doing Whimsical too, is I can kind of play around with the different styles that I normally go to. Like if I wanted to make this back area a bit darker, I can fill it in. And this is definitely more pulling from shadow blocking, but I can play it into this style too. I would just say if you are mixing styles, just definitely try to be consistent with it. I think having too many styles within the same can sometimes just be conflicting. It doesn't actually work well together. It might work well separately, but together it might just read kind of weird. Let's see here. Jen says, should I get a display tablet? I rely a lot on direct contact with the paper, and the no display tablet I use I can't draw nearly as good as on paper. Should I just practice instead? Should I get a display tablet? I actually don't know what a no tablet or no display tablet is. Is that basically the old tablets? See, I came from the era where tablets used to be just a hunk of plastic, and then when you draw on it, you have to look on your screen. And if that's the case, I totally know what you mean, because I had to do that. Even learning how to draw digitally, I had to do that. But should you... Honestly, I think this is more practice, because once I got the Cintiq, I was able to learn Cintiq, and then obviously I draw traditionally. I think it's a lot of just practicing whatever tools you're working with, whatever medium, and you'll kind of find what works best for you. So for me, I learned that I like drawing on paper. I like the tactile feeling of drawing on paper. So that will probably always be my number one. But I know that when I draw digitally, I can still use what I've learned on how to draw traditionally and then implement that into my digital works. Jen says, I always forget I have all 4 volumes, and whenever you mention the 4th book, I just go, how did I miss that one? Wait, I didn't. Yeah, I have 4 books. I think because the 4th one came out during right after COVID. It was early 2021. Actually, it was about this time last year, because I was doing a Kickstarter for it. It feels so much longer. Can you guys believe it's been 3 years since COVID started? Or we're on the 3rd year? That's crazy. But anyways, the 4th book I'm the most proud of, probably because obviously it's my most recent one, but because of all the extra time I had at home, it's by far the largest book, and it's the most girthy of content, I would say. It's filled to the brim with just a lot of my drawings during the 2020 lockdown period. So you can kind of play with bigger shapes, maybe throw in some spaghetti strands. I mean, Whimsical, you can just really have fun with it. Nyango says, those tiny hair types next to each other are so cute and they're so very well done. Wait, what tiny hair types? Are you talking about just like all of them all together? It's kind of fun to see. I guess I've never really made like a chart like this before. I mean, this is a good example too of like hair doesn't have to take you forever. I mean, I definitely like to just noodle with hair a lot. It's like hair's one of my favorite things to draw, so obviously I don't mind spending a little extra time with it, especially if I'm watching a show or something. You better believe I'm going to be spending way more extra time than I need to on the hair. But I was able to draw 7 different styles of hair in less than 2 hours, and this is while talking on a live stream. So for any of you guys, don't obsessively try to draw every strand of hair. Like, have it be more shapular and try to have fun with it. I think it reads when people are having fun with their work versus when they're not. And I think I know I see this in my own work. I tend to get tightened up with my drawing strokes and the way that I'm doing the flowiness of things. And when I'm just having fun, I tend to go way faster. It's like one of those weird secrets of the trade, which shouldn't be a secret at all. It's like, have fun. Have fun and you'll see the results. I would say also for whimsical hair, I tend to throw little beads and things within it as well. Why not? I mean, this is more stepping into like a mono territory. Yoshitaka Amano is like one of my favorite artists ever. He's obviously most famous for the Final Fantasy illustrations or the what was the vampire series? Why am I blanking on that right now? But he was really famous for those, and obviously his own personal work has really taken off as well over the years. You know, let's do like a wraparound curl here. I don't know if I like that. I mean, that's the great part about the whimsical hair is as long as it kind of gives the impression of hair, you can kind of get away with drawing it however you want. Josephino, Tim, I still have my Wacom tablet with a piece of paper taped onto it. Oh, do you really? That's so funny. I remember when we did that in college. So for you guys listening to this, so imagine the old bamboo Wacom tablets. That was the one I had when I was learning digital. We would put a piece of paper over it to make it feel more like you're drawing on paper. Oh, Joe, that's funny that you're still doing that. And then this is also where I like to play with bigger shapes. So I might erase some areas just so that it lets the drawing breathe a bit more. As my old boss would say, let it breathe. And this is where we're getting definitely more into like the Art Deco look as well. I mean, spaghetti hair is definitely one thing, but then letting just giant chunks of space and shapes be implied as hair is definitely very Art Deco. So I guess something that I didn't really mention as much in the earlier ones, I like to then, after I have kind of a base for my hair, I'll usually take my eraser and erase right over a big section. And let's say that connects all the way up here. And then I'll have that lace over the entirety of it. And mind you, I don't always like it, but I always like to at least try. Because now we're giving dimension and like overlapping to the hair. So like I kind of like that initial shape, but why don't we break it up into 2 strands instead? So then I might take it down here and pull it up like that. And then if I'm like really, having fun with it, I'll start like following that line and be like, okay, well, it comes up here, then maybe it crosses over one more time. So it kind of creates this effect. I mean, this is where we're getting definitely into more like whimsical, you know what I mean? Like we're throwing realism not only out the window, we're like shooting it with a gun. Well, thank you, Anna Thompson, for subscribing. So then if I'm doing more of the stringiness, I might be like, okay, well, let's try adding maybe another one. We'll have this one come down here. Because the way that I like to look at art, it's a lot of play, experimenting, problem solving. Like, I think those are very important aspects of creating art that I think sometimes it's seen as too serious and there's got to be like a rigid, structured path from start to finish. But the way that I look at it is when I'm the most structured, oftentimes it's the worst art, in my opinion, that I create. When I'm just having fun and I'm just like testing out like what will this look like, that's where I tend to see better things start to arise. And then sometimes I'll also have shapes melt into each other. So like where this strand and this bigger shape meets, I'll literally not even draw a line there. And that's where I like to have more fun than with like negative space and like see what happens with that. So yeah, what do I got? I got 7 minutes left. Okay, so if you guys have any last minute questions about our hair layout today, maybe I'll move it a little higher. This would be whimsical. So now would be your chance to ask them before I cut the stream off and then get back to prepping for Anime Central. Whimsical. Yeah, Whimsical Hair is just wild and weird and fun. Where was I? Jen says, idea for doppelganger creature, or doubleganger creature, where each one is differentiated by styles of hair like this. I mean, it would be kind of fun if I gave a base out before the stream and like all of us that wanted to work on it during the stream worked on like our variation of whatever the foundation that was given was, and then at the end of the stream we look at how different they were for each one. Actually, I think I will do that. That sounds actually pretty fun. Remember fun? I remember when things weren't as serious in every field, and oh my gosh, I mean, there's so much that is just so crazy nowadays. And it's like sad. I wish we could remember like caring about like video games and I don't know, going outside. Something as simple as that, like getting excited about it without having to worry about the crazy news that are reporting on all the like the crazy shootings, and it's a lot. It's a lot to digest on a weekly basis. That's why I think creating escapism stuff, I think that's maybe why a lot of us even do it, you know. And as a kid, I think we did the escapism stuff is more of like a fun thing. But as adults, I feel like it's like we almost feel we need to. Something to just get away for a little bit. Oh, Whimsical Hair. You're so whimsical. Hey, Kitty's here. Hey, Kat. How are you doing? So Kitty Hug Fitness is my best friend, and she's asking, is mayonnaise an instrument? I mean, I guess if you slop mayonnaise around enough, it does create sound. And if sound is the basis for what is music, then I guess yes. But I'm not an expert. Jen says, my motto is to take realism behind the building to deal the final blow. Yeah, I think that, like I said, I grew up learning realism. So like there's a lot that can be learned from realism. But yeah, I think finding your own voice and your style eventually is like really why everyone starts with realism. Like that's the end goal, is to find what you can take from realism and then just almost never do it again. For me, at least. Wrote Paprika says, so happy I finally caught a live stream of you. I cannot even say what style of hair is my favorite yet. I got one of your card sets of a friend last year. They are so nice. Well, thank you. I'm glad you enjoy them. Actually, we just got the proofs from Bicycle. We're partnering with Bicycle to do the reorder, and I'm happy to say they look really good. Let's see here. Jen says, whimsical. Oh, did I spell that wrong? Oh, no. Oh, you're just messing with me. I see you, Jens. Sergio says, thank you for this. I struggle with hair, but I will give this exercise a try. I hope I can level up on my art hair. Yeah, I think, like I said, playing around with different styles of hair really helps you align with what you're having fun with when drawing hair. So don't feel like you have to do either this or, I mean, I guess everyone starts with gestural. I feel like everyone gets blocked into doing either realism or like heavy line art, and then some do shadow blocking, but I implore you to try other ways of drawing hair as well, and you might surprise yourself with what you enjoy. I feel like this should be higher. She has too big of a forehead here. Kat, Timmy, I am bringing vegan mayo over, and we are going to make a condiment band. Oh boy, what would we be called? The condiments. I mean, you could just call it the condiments, honestly. Galaxara says, will you be uploading these examples somewhere or just keeping it here on YouTube? I will upload this to our Discord that you can join below. There's a link, and I will post it in the channel called Stream Follow Along. And then lastly, we're going to end on Oscar. Says, I think combining 3 and 4 is going to be my go-to style with the touch of realism. Yeah, I hope, I can't wait to see it. I know that I do shadow blocking. I did it a lot like 3 years ago, as you saw in my third book. I mean, I was only doing shadow blocking. So it's a lot of fun and it's really quick. So I think you might be interested in it. Actually, did I have my... No, that was my 4th book. Hold on. I had the one with Nate, because I saw your character that you posted for the critique stream, and I think you might try something like this, where you're literally like keeping your light areas like minimal detail, and then your shadow area is more minimal, but then the area where the light and the shadow meet is where you kind of add some complexity, and then off the head can really sell how the hair looks. So I would definitely try that for your stuff. I should note we are doing a critique stream. I think it's next week already. Is it really? Wait, I think it is. Yeah, next Tuesday. Actually, yeah, I should be promoting this more. If you want to have your work critiqued by me on a stream, next Tuesday I will be doing a Patreon critique stream, and I'll be looking at submissions and giving my feedback on them. So if you want some feedback, it's $5 to join the lowest tier on my Patreon, and you can get a free critique from me. And you have to submit, though, by Monday night, and you have to post your image along with what you think is working and what's not working. So yes, I almost forgot about that. Thank you for reminding me about that. Who am I thinking? I feel like I'm thinking myself. What? What's happening? All right, clearly my brain is fried. Here are the 8 different examples. I'll do one more gloss over on them. So gestural, realism, and shadow blocking are usually like the main 3 that artists learn. And then I feel like a lot of artists that look at a lot of manga or anime, they often tend to do a lot of line art precision. I think that's why this is the top half, because I feel like these are the starters. That doesn't mean that they're worse than. I see a lot of artists that do line art precision and shadow blocking, and they are experts, and they are so good at what they do. So don't take this as this is like the worst tier. These are usually just the ones that people generally start out with. And then these 3 are just fun to play with. I think playing with unrealistic lighting with gradients and negative space. So definitely playing with negative space I think is fun to do. Spaghetti hair, always fun for me to do. I've never not had fun drawing spaghetti hair. It's just silly. And then whimsical is just fun. I don't even know how to describe it. It's just weird. It's fun. And if you do it right, I feel like you can get really cool, interesting end results. I think, let me show. The one that I think of that I think most people know me for, because it's my most liked image on socials, and I feel like that's the one that gets brought up to me the most, is this one, my floral goddess. This hair doesn't make any sense. Not a lick of sense, but I love it. I love the look of it. I love the high contrast areas. I love the flow of it. And obviously it represents hair without it actually looking like hair. So I would definitely implore you guys to try the more whimsical style and see if you like it for yourself. Okay, I think that's all we got for today. I need to go finish up some cleaning because then I gotta go play volleyball. We'll see how I do. I'm just hoping that I'm not the worst on the team. That's like my goal, which is like a horrible goal to have, but that's my goal for tonight. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming, and hopefully we'll see you next Wednesday, but I'll also be streaming on Tuesday for the critique stream. So 2 streams next week. If you want to come join, that's what we will be doing. Okay, take care, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Okay, bye everyone. Have a good rest of the week. Bye, 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 bye. Oh, where's my OBS?